Welcome to Story Zest. Here you'll find fresh original tales written and narrated by me every Monday and Thursday. Sit back, relax, and enjoy these fictional journeys crafted just for you. Chapter 4. After school, we went straight to Sid's house to collect the shampoo. Then we went to Jane's to collect his. Since we had to confirm the assumption, we decided to apply the shampoo to Sid's dog. We washed his tail, applying both the shampoo one by one. And bang! The fur started coming up immediately. All three of us were furious. What do we do now? Sid grunted. Jen smirked. Leave it to me. On Sunday afternoon, Jane took us to an ice cream parlor in front of the Sunshine Club. We sat on each chair in front of the huge glass room where the exit of the club was clearly visible. Hey, why did you call us this far for the ice cream? I asked in confusion. Wait and watch, boobs, he said. If nothing interesting happens, you're dead, Jen, warned Sid. Oh, come on now. Have some patience, boys, Jen said, shaking his head. Waiting patiently for 20 minutes, we saw Rosie coming out of the club with her friends. Her damp and clinging hair loosely pulled back suggested she had come out of swim. However, their face looked concerned. The pace of the walk told that something wrong had happened. What's wrong with them? Sid asked. But just after them, we saw some familiar figures walking at a fast pace, holding and touching their hairs. It was Moto and his gang. It was clearly visible that Moto had lost some part of his hair. They were looking patchy even from a distance, and clearly they were upset and furious. I turned into Jane and saw that he was grinning. Suddenly, a nervous feeling hit me. My stomach lurched. I then looked at Sid, who looked dumbfounded too. No way, he said in shock. Yes way, said Jane, looking proud. But my heart hammered against my chest. I felt uncomfortable. Thanks to God, the one-way mirror prevented those bullies from seeing us. How did you do that? Asked Sid, now looking excited. I told ya, leave it on me. Turned out, using his charm, Jane had convinced Rosie, the girl Moto had a crush on, to invite those bullies for a swim, to which he agreed readily. She had then offered the guys the shampoo which Jane had asked her to give them, the same shampoo they themselves had messed around with. You've got a reach, huh? Said Sid, patting Jane's shoulder. Meanwhile, I sat there feeling blank. The next day at school, we searched everywhere for the bullies, but they were nowhere to be seen. After a few days, we finally saw them, each one of them sporting a cap. We couldn't control our laughter. Jane rolled on the ground, making fun of them. Look at the moon! The moon! He cried. No, those are eggs. Big, big eggs, Sid added with a laugh. Meanwhile, I was looking at Moto. His death stare sent chills down my spine. I felt like we shouldn't have made it so obvious that we were the ones behind the mischief. Now I feared they would retaliate with something even more extreme. But thankfully, days went by without any casualties. Everything was oddly peaceful. And just like that, the exam approached. But just before exam day, news broke out that someone had leaked the exam papers. The school immediately went on lockdown. Teachers started searching for the culprit right away. They searched every student's bags and lockers. When the search was over, students were released to do their regular stuff. Just then, a few teachers and the principal entered our classroom. They looked furious. They called Jen and Sid's name and took them to the principal's office. I was left alone with other students. It made me curious about what could have happened. I couldn't sit relaxed. After class, I ran towards the principal's office and saw Sid and Jane come out. Sid looked furious. What's wrong, guys? I asked. They framed us, Jane said. The leaked papers were found in our lockup. We have been suspended. And I know it's them, said Sid, gritting his teeth. They've gone too far this time. I'm not going to leave them alone. A vein bulged in his temple. I had never seen him so angry. I felt bad for my friends. At the same time, I was worried. Why did they spare me? I mumbled. I don't think they've spared you. I believe they've got something more for you. So you better watch out, said Jen. I nodded. I didn't want to show it, but it kind of sent shivers down my spine. Chapter 5. Without Jen and Sid, I felt super lonely at school. I took my exams and wandered around school all alone. Most of the time, I would go to the library to escape the chaos and study by myself. One day, while I was in the library, a group of girls at the table just behind me started talking about moto. I couldn't control myself from eavesdropping. I pretended to concentrate on my own studies with my headphones on. One of the girls talked about how Moto bullied her and ate her lunch every time, but now she would bring an extra meal for him even without asking, and he would take it happily. The other girl added, "Why would he eat your lunch? It's so weird. At first, I thought he was bullying you, but now he comes, takes the lunch, and leaves, as if you're his sister. I mean, how weird is that?" I don't mind giving him the food, the girl added. Maybe he likes the food I make for him. In fact, I kind of like him nowadays. He's not as bad as he seems to be. He's a nice guy. Nice guy. What a joke, I thought to myself. A week flew by and it was result day. Jen and Sid were back finally. I felt elated with those two around. In the classroom, the class teacher announced our results, and when he announced mine, my jaw dropped. I had failed the exam. There was no way that was right. I wasn't one to fail. I wasn't as good as Sid and Jen in sports and other activities, but at least I aced my studies, so failing was impossible. Jen and Sid were shocked too. Even the class teacher seemed surprised. He asked me to see him after class, so I followed his instruction. While heading towards the staff room, I saw Moto and his gang walking by. Our eyes met for a brief second. The smirk on his face was all the confirmation I needed. The teacher inquired if something was wrong because my bad performance surprised him. But I had no proof, only a suspicion. So instead of explanations, I simply promised to do better next time and left. The three of us gathered at Sid's place. We slumped on the couch, a heavy silence hanging in the air. Things were escalating and we were clueless about what to do next. We knew the bully gang was behind our misery, but without evidence, we were at our wits' end. Chapter 6. We went to a family dinner with Sid and Uncle James at a restaurant in town. After we finished eating, Sid and I went for a walk outside. Just then, we saw a few staff members pushing another staff member and yelling at him for allegedly stealing food again. I squinted my eyes trying to see better and spotted a familiar silhouette. I then looked at Sid and saw that he was doing the same. Suddenly, his eyes widened. "Look!" he exclaimed. I turned around. It was Moto. He was being pushed out of the compound by other staff members. Our jaws dropped. We looked at each other. I figured out that Sid had the same question going on in his mind. Why did he steal the food? Head hung low, Moto hurried away. Sid and I followed quietly from behind. After walking for almost 15 minutes straight, he turned right into an alleyway. He stopped and crouched. We hid behind dustbin to spy on the scene. In the corner next to an old house, Moto hugged a little boy close and sat down beside him. The sight was unbelievable. The place appeared to be a homeless encampment. Empty bottles littered the ground, and several figures sprawled on the sidewalk. Some people chatted while others exchanged curses. But what in the world was Moto doing there? We stayed there for almost half an hour, observing the scene. Then he pulled a ragged blanket over them both and went to sleep, hugging the little child close. Our eyes widened in disbelief. "What in the world?" Sid whispered. "God knows," I replied. It was a sight that left us speechless. We returned to the restaurant where Dad and everyone else were waiting for us. "Where have you been? It's going to be a long day tomorrow, so we need to hurry up," Mom bustled us. Dad dropped off Uncle James and Sid first, and then we headed home. At school, we filled Jen in on everything. His expression was as expected, utter shock. "Whoa, homeless? I wanted to kill him just yesterday, and now I feel awful," he said. "That idiot. Now my whole perception of him has changed. What do we do now?" Sid exclaimed worriedly. "Nothing. Let's not let him know that we know his reality. Also, let's not cross his path anymore." The next day, Sid and I met early in the morning at the same station where we had seen Moto the night before. We searched the area, but Moto was nowhere to be seen. We approached the place cautiously. The little boy was there, playing with an old lady who seemed to be an homeless too. The lady looked at us.
Hey, the kiddos. You must be Moro's friend.
Yes, does Moto live here with you guys? I asked hesitantly.
Yes, this is his home. We are his family. We live here happily. This is his little brother Lucas. He considers me his grandma and gets food for us every time. Please have a seat.
She gestured to a broken ragged seat. No, actually, we are getting late. We came here to give this. Sid handed over a large packet of food to the lady and gave chocolate to the kid. After that, we hurriedly left. We didn't want to be seen by Moto at any cost. Now that I think of those girls talking about getting food for Moto, my heart sank. Everything had flipped. From that day onwards, all three of us would go there to provide food and clothes. In fact, Jane became so comfortable over there that the kid Lucas started calling him Brother Jane. It was funny to watch him get along so well with everyone out there. But we made sure not to tell our real names to anyone, otherwise, Moto would find out. Meanwhile, we were curious to know how Moto ended up in such a place. It seemed he struggled with his life a lot, but weirdly, no one had any information about that. This was a secret he kept close to his heart. Just like that, it was our senior year of high school. The school year passed uneventfully, free from the usual disruption caused by the bully gang. One day, Jen and I went to see Moto's brother after school. He absolutely loved ice cream, so we treated him every now and then. While we were engrossed playing with the kid, someone yanked me from behind. I sprawled onto the ground. Everyone, including me, whipped around. It was Moto. Fury contorted his face as he grabbed my collar. What are you doing here? He roared. Hey, cut it out, bro, Jen roared. We're here to see Granny. What's wrong with you? Leave him alone. Moto looked like a volcano about to erupt. He punched Jane in the face, spitting out, Don't you dare cross my path. Just mind your own business and leave. Moto's brother, tears streaming down his face, ran towards Moto, whimpering in fear.
Cut it out, you kiddos!
Moto's grandma barked, clenching her fist.
Moto, what's gotten into you? Don't treat your friends like that. They're good kids. They always bring food. No one's ever been so good to us. Leave them alone.
Get lost, he muttered, his voice laced with venom. Don't you dare come here again. Jen helped me to my feet. We left without a word. Surprisingly, I wasn't angry at him. I knew Jen felt the same. We could only feel sorry for him. We never went back despite wanting to. Even at school, Moto would turn and walk away whenever he saw us. He seemed uncomfortable, often looking down when our path crossed. Geez, what's wrong with that brat? I'm feeling weird seeing him like that. I would prefer seeing him creating a mess around rather than this quiet side of him, said Sid with a frown. Same here, I nodded.